Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and quite an introduction there. Almost feel embarrassed. Look, thank you, and it's always a pleasure to come and speak to anyone about rural fire service matters, in particular to farmers, because of the fact of the matter is, most of our organisation work, operate, and deliver our services in the rural communities, and it's something that we can't forget and must embrace moving forward. I will abbreviate my presentation to make sure that you get your morning tea or lunch on time, but I also would like to allow time for some questions and discussion at the end, because this is not just about me as a talking head coming up, giving you information and trying to run out of the room as quick as possible. That's not what I'm here for. Okay, so please feel free. So look, what happened last fire season? There's no doubt, no secret. The last fire season was challenging for New South Wales. Certainly wasn't the worst fire season we've seen over recent years, but certainly in the period of February, we saw some of the worst fire danger period over the course of 2 weeks. And that, as you know, that was after a very protracted and prolonged heat wave, which saw a lot of the country dry out. And those fuels that ordinarily wouldn't be available obviously become available for fires to ignite. Some of the things that you see there, obviously, the Georges Plain fire, Wimbledon Road, is the Bathurst type area, and the bottom photo there is the Binnelong Road there at Boggaborai. One of the things that we did see last fire season, and certainly those of you that can remember the Victorian bushfires of 2009 and the Black Saturday fires, we saw catastrophic conditions that we'd never seen before in the Australian landscape affect Victoria. On the 12th of February this year, we saw catastrophic fire conditions that exceeded Victoria in 2009 in over a quarter of the state of New South Wales, particularly in that northwestern region, and where there's over 1.5 million people in population, and a lot of the large-scale landmass of New South Wales affected by either catastrophic or extreme fire danger. So we saw some very challenging fire weather this fire season. Particularly whilst overall not very busy per se, but certainly it was a challenge in that one period. Essentially, I suppose we're going to talk about Sir Ivan. I've had a look through your conference papers, and I know there's going to be some discussion this afternoon regarding bushfires in Sir Ivan, and in fact I welcome the discussion to take place. We need to be discussing matters of bushfire. We need to be talking about community protection and working together in a partnership to making sure that we address the needs of bushfires for all communities across New South Wales. We saw mass amounts of brigade movement, both from the local brigades, and also we saw pre-positioning of strike teams from around the state in various locations, again in preparation across those catastrophic fire areas. There's a bit of a photo there to give you a bit of an idea of the Sir Ivan fire. For those of you, and I'm sure there's many in the room that know fire and how it behaves, but certainly what we saw on that catastrophic day is that fire become pyroconvective. So it created its own weather system, and that's evident by the fact that the smoke plume was seen significantly up into the upper atmosphere. Sufficiently so that if some of you were there, we saw lightning. It generated lightning and erratic winds and strong and powerful conditions ahead of the main fire front. So certainly it was like one of those that we saw again within the Blue Mountains area of 2013. But likewise, as I don't want to say luck would have it, because that's probably not the right term of phrase. It is unfortunate that the local area in this area, this is the second significant fire that affected the Wombalong Shire in as many years. So the local communities that live in that Wombalong area and the Warramungal Shire, from the Wombalong fire, are now having experienced the Sir Ivan fire within that Dunedoo area. So again, to give you a bit of an idea, it spread exceptionally fast under those catastrophic conditions, and what you see on the screen here now is a fire overlay map. This is something that we would typically prepare for the coroner in the like of what the fire was doing and where it was at certain points of the day. And as you can see, that's giving you a time frame from the Saturday through to the Monday. And we saw significant fire runs to the west, and then obviously when the southerly change come through, significant fire runs to the north from that fire as a result of the inclement conditions and the that we saw. So essentially what you're looking at is a fire that over the course of a few hours managed to burn itself 30 kilometres. And again, we didn't see something like that since the state mine fire of 2013, the Blue Mountains. So key lessons for the Rural Fire Service, and no doubt there will continue to be lessons learned as we discuss, in forums such as this, the fire and the fire season in general. But essentially, preemptive declarations and placement of resources. So we preemptively declared a bushfire emergency under Section 44 of the Rural Fires Act in any area that did have catastrophic fire conditions forecast, and preemptively put in place the appointment of a certified incident controller and an incident management team ready to go should anything have happened. It's worth of note, obviously, the Harbour fire took its run, and it was probably not unexpected, given the fact that it had started the day before. There were a number of other areas across the state, and I'm going to use Canobolas as an example. That were under a preemptive declaration, did have catastrophic conditions, had a Section 44 in place, an IMT in place, that were prepared, ready, and were able to get on top of the fire that they did have rather quickly and bring it under control. The preemptive use of the emergency alert, the SMS and telephone-based alert systems. It's one of those interesting ones where you can often get criticised for using it, but you can often get praised for using it as well. And the anecdotal feedback that we've had from a lot of farming communities, but also those small town and villages was, we knew it was bad. Obviously it'd been talked about in the media. We knew the weather was going to come up. It's cemented in our mind when we received the text message or the telephone message. And what it did prompt is a lot of rural families to have at least the discussion. And I know a couple of rural landowners that I spoke to at Quay the day after the main fire, the main for Harbour fire, was that there was a general agreement that and please, I don't mean to sound sexist here, but the father and the sons typically stayed behind or went and fought the fire, and the kids and generally the wife stayed at the homestead to defend. But there was a bit of an agreement. Should you receive another one of these alerts from the Rural Fire Service to give you alert to another fire, then the agreement was to get up and get out of there. So there was a lot of anecdotal feedback to myself that there was some real benefit in being able to A, alert the community initially, and then B, obviously alert the community when the fire actually did occur. Obviously, we continue to engage through traditional media, so the print, radio, television, and we continue to talk about the fire conditions in the lead up to that bad weekend, and we'll continue to do so. The increased use of social media. Social media is becoming a big thing for us, and the want and need for information by the communities is becoming quite significant. We're seeing massive amounts, I mean millions, of site visits and hit to our public website in respect to the major fire updates to get information, but also through the applications such as Fires Near Me. And we're also seeing a significant increase in the use of things like Twitter and Facebook, again, to keep up to date. A lot of families, it's about, I suppose, communicating with those communities affected, but it's also about communicating with the families in those areas that are affected as well. So, where there's mum and dad or uncle and auntie somewhere else in the state or somewhere else in Australia, hearing on the national news that there's this large fire occurring at the east of Dunedoo. What's happening? What about my family? And we're seeing a lot of that interest come through social media as well to keep themselves up to date and informed. We saw increased use. So one of the things I suppose that there is some discussion in respect to what did you learn from Wombalong and what's the difference in respect from Wombalong and now the Harbour fire. We had the fire behaviour analysts was a key recommendation from the Wombalong inquiry, and they were embedded into the incident management team now, and they were able to provide that fire predictive information to the incident management team. Likewise, other, including local IMT and the increased use of those fire behaviour analysis, providing information to the guys on the ground as well as those back in the fire control centres. This year we saw it was the second year of the 2-year trial of the large air tanker and the very large air tanker, so the C-130 and the DC-10. And they proved themselves quite invaluable on that day across many of the fire fronts, sufficiently so that we actually brought the other two large air tankers up from Victoria and used them in New South Wales on that day as well. So we actually had 4 large air tankers operating across the New South Wales landscape that weekend. One of the things that we are finding as the Rural Fire Service that, and can I say rightfully so, is that increased level of scrutiny, increased level of interest into the fires and into what happened to the fires and the outcomes of the fires sooner. And what happened this fire season, significantly so that we've never seen before, is I was receiving the first of GIPPers and subpoenas from law firms seeking to commence class action before the fire was even out. And that is something significant that we're actually starting to see. And a lot of my team's time during these fire operations is also now thinking about, well, how do we prepare ourselves for getting the information together and starting to compile those files, whether it be for the police on behalf of the coroner asking, or whether it be through a government information request, or whether it be through subpoena. So we're actually seeing those come through. And to give you an example, like the Currandooly fire down near Queanbeyan, we received the first lot of subpoenas, as I said, 2 days before the fire was even officially declared out. So the level of increase and interest in these fires, both within the community, both within the legal framework, is significant and something that we need to keep in mind moving forward to make sure that we're prepared for. Community issues after any large fire, you're just going to have them. And that's typically, the science of emergency management will tell you that whenever the community suffers a devastating event, whether that be flood, fire, earthquake or any other natural disaster, they go through a process. And one of those processes is I'm not going to give you a lecture on social cohesion, but essentially, yourself, there's that emotional roller coaster that you go through. So everyone banding together, then typically it's looking for the reasons why, a bit of grief loss, and then finally acceptance. And that's no different after this fire season. And again, our role in this, and sort of, again, the reason why I was in Coolar the day after the main fire run, was to, again, listen to the community concerns, talk to the people, and actually start to get some of that feedback and understanding of where they are and where their headspace is at after such an event like this. As I said before, there was a couple of things that we took heed of and brought it into this fire season. As I said, as the unfortunate outcome would be that we would have a significant fire in the same area as we did as the Womblong fire. The Strategic Fire Trail Network, so we saw amendments to the Rural Fires Act in relation to establishing a Strategic Fire Trail Network, giving the Commissioner powers to designate a Strategic Fire Trail Network and enforce upon government land managers and occupiers the need to maintain a fire trail where it's determined by the local BFMC that a fire trail is required. One of the other interesting changes to the legislation is actually now allows us to establish a fire trail network across private lands. But the big difference there is the establishment of any fire trail across private lands will be by agreement. So there must be that conversation and collaboration with local landholders, and there must be agreements by the local landowners before that trail is put in. And in respect to the construction and maintenance and management of that trail, the responsibility for that falls back onto, in most cases, the Rural Fire Service to do. So what we're trying to do is ensure that we've got an adequate fire trail network across any land tenure. And if it does involve farmland, it does involve private property, then we don't expect private citizens to be out of pocket for the purpose of a strategic fire trail network. So, and as I said, there's a process in place to make sure that's not the case. Our increased fire prediction capability, we employed a number of new fire behaviour analysts and have placed them regionally across New South Wales. And again, the idea there is to get them into incident management teams, get them into the field to provide that intelligence to the ground controllers and allow them to make better decisions or informed decisions in respect to what's going on. And then obviously additional resources and the need to increase the level of hazard reduction burning across the landscape. Again, unfortunately this season and the conditions that we've seen in the off-season has resulted in less than satisfactory hazard reduction burning rates. And certainly we need to, as soon as conditions conduce themselves of it, get in and really start to do more hazard reduction across the landscape in the management of fuels across the state. Some actions in bushfire management committees. We recently, the Commissioner signed off and got agreements to the sponsorship for training sessions for farmers' representatives on bushfire management committees. So we'll start to see some information come out and those training sessions become available. And also the provision of financial support for farmers' representatives that need to travel or be accommodated to sit on or be representative on your local bushfire management committees or committees across the state. So that's certainly an improvement on what we had before, and certainly it's about engaging better with farmers, with New South Wales farmers as representatives on these committees. I was with Commissioner Fitzsimmons and we met with a delegation from farmers, and one of the things that I suppose we all agreed was, as an agency, we need to engage more with our locals. We need to engage more with farmers. So one of the strategies that I've issued instruction to our people on, and I actively encourage anyone in this room that if you haven't, and particularly if you're a bushfire management committee delegate, if you haven't heard from one of our local superintendents, please feel free to let me know, because they've been told you need to reach out, you need to make contact, and I want to see them meet regularly with the farmers' representatives to discuss local issues that affect the Bushfire Management Committee and that affect bushfire suppression and mitigation in the local area. The mechanism's there. We just need to use it, we need to foster it, and we need to give it a red-hot crack on both sides, on the Rural Fire Service side, but also on the farmers' sides itself. So, I'll be the first to say we need to engage more. We need to engage more not only with farmers, but all the key stakeholders in the bushfire landscape, because it's important. We all have a role to play in bushfire management.
Jason, we will have to start winding it up.
Okay, so one of the things I'll touch on very quickly is one of the things, again, we're working with farmers on and some industry in respect to, and you'll see some information come out in respect to the Grain Harvesters Guide. Some of you may or may not have seen that. Is Graham in the room? Excellent, thank you, Graham. If you want any information, please feel free to go and see Graham. He's holding up a sticker right now. He's probably got a bag full of them and more than happy to hand them out. I'd like to quote Graham, if I may, if that's all right, Graham. One of the things that I got told very loud and clear from farmers and from the community more so was, as the Rural Fire Service, we're not your mother. Thanks, Graham. And essentially let farmers farm and let them manage their lands as they are, because they've been doing it for a bloody long time, and you have. So we're looking at developing a new process in this harvest season, again, with the guide, seek to put out some information just to sort of make contractors and farmers aware that, you know what, conditions across the area are pretty bad, and you need to either look at the guide. If you're outside the parameters, you should probably stop. And if you're within the parameters, please continue, as you have every right to do. So you're going to see some more information coming out about that, sufficiently so that hopefully, and I do have to put a caveat on this, that I'm yet to sort of gauge this with the BFCC and the like. The old adage that we used to get, or the angst that we used to have in respect to cessation of harvest requests, we're hoping to avoid that angst and, again, put responsibility back where it needs to be, and that's to the person behind the wheel and the harvester. So we're going to be working and facilitating through that as well.